For me, a micro trip is really a short, intentional getaway. That is a getaway in which you are not just saying, can I do this? Can I actually make this happen? It's you made it happen. You were able to experience the destination in a real way, and you were able to save your time and your money. It's how you experience the city. It's how you move about the itinerary. And that to me is what makes it a micro trip.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Unlock Black Journeys, the podcast, where we archive the Black experience across all 50 states. I'm your host, Dr. Franny. On this podcast, we explore Black travel, celebrate Black businesses, unpack the Black experience, and highlight our Black communities. Season 1 is Black in Motion, how we experience place. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we're unlocking micro-cations, short intentional trips that are 4 nights or less that let you explore without having to travel for long. We are particularly focused on weekend trips. Today's guest is Kylah, founder of Go Kylah Go, a travel brand that helps busy professionals maximize limited PTO through thoughtfully curated weekend getaways, destination guides, and practical travel hacks. Through her Girl on the Go adventures, she has built a community of more than 70,000 travelers who believe you don't need unlimited vacation time to see the world. Outside of her travel content, Kylah is an engineer by background, works in operations management, and is currently completing her MBA part-time, leaving proof that you can build a career while still making time for adventure. If you're curious about how to maximize your travel so you can travel more even when time is short and ultimately spend less, this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. Kylah, I have been following your content very closely, and I just love all the detailed itineraries you've been providing around weekend trips. I think many of us can resonate with wanting to take a trip but feeling crunched for time, and your platform definitely shows us that we can take a trip and use no PTO.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I can't wait for us to dig into this today, especially because your girl loves a good micro trip.
Yeah, I want to hear about that as well. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me, and I'm excited to speak on the platform.
Yes. And so I always like to start with people's origin story because I feel very much where people come from shapes how they view and travel through the world. And so can you share with us, like, where does your story begin? Where did you grow up? Where are you based now?
So I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I was raised by an incredible single mother. Who taught me the importance of experiences over things. So that looked like growing up, it was holidays or birthdays. It wasn't, what are you going to get? It was, where are we going to go? So I actually went on my first international trip when I was just 6 years old. We went to Paris. And I still remember seeing like that large of a plane for the first time. And it just like lit something in me to want to travel anytime that I got the opportunity to. So I guess you could say moving into both like my university career and also my graduate career, I studied engineering, but any opportunity that I could get to travel on the school's dime, I was taking it. I was taking any experience to get out of the country, research, study abroad, anything. And I think really the story kind of takes a twist when after school, after graduating, I found myself just starting a career, as many people do. And that's kind of when you get into the grind. It's just you work, you climb the ladder. And I enjoyed that. I was solving big problems. I work in supply chain. I have a team of people that I really enjoyed working with. But I do think there was something missing. So about, I would say 2 years ago was when I was like, okay, there's something not right about what's going on. And that's when I realized it was those experiences that were being missed. So I think that's really where the pivot to micro trips and wanting to incorporate more and more travel into my life, even with just some constraints of school, work, time that had now evolved in kind of my early career. So that's kind of where the idea spread out to round that story out. I actually was able to take my mom back to Paris 20 years later on a micro trip of our own. So I like to always just note that because I think it was one of those full circle moments for me.
I love, love, love a full circle moment. So that is so precious for me. But I think also just a lot of your story resonates in terms of when you are working a demanding job, wondering how am I going to be able to take time for myself? So I know for me, having worked in education for the majority of my career, it was one of those things where we're given the days off, but it's up to you to think about like how are you going to take advantage of that 3-day weekend that you're given, or a week break, but it might be during the priciest of seasons,
Right. It's
right?
during summer where I'm like, everyone wants to travel during summer. Give me shoulder season off.
Exactly, exactly. And so this is why I think it's so important, because I think when we think of micro trips, it's not only about saving time, but in many cases with the economy now, it's also about saving money too.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can you tell us where are you based right now, and also like talk to us about your cultural roots and how that may have shaped how you travel?
Yeah, for sure. So currently I'm based in Chicago. After I graduated from my undergrad institution, I moved up to Chicago to go to Northwestern to pursue master's in civil engineering. So that's kind of how I got to Chicago. I wasn't planning on staying necessarily. I was like, "Ugh, it's going to be too cold," especially coming from Florida. They were like, "How are you going to bear it?" I was like, "I don't know." But I absolutely fell in love with the city. Something that's really important to me is being surrounded within a city, but then also having access to like a water feature. And Chicago has it all. We've got a river, we've got a lake, which they're saying has beaches. I was like, I don't believe in a lake beach, but there's beaches here. So it just like was the perfect city for me. So I've been here now 4 years. It's been, and I have enjoyed, every moment of it. As far as my background, we have family all across Florida, and then I've got some family up in New York as well. So we're kind of split across there. But I've always grown up knowing that, experiences, chasing new travel experiences was exactly what I wanted to do. So I think that, I've allowed that to kind of seep into my Black travel experience as well, which we can talk a little bit about. But I've been fortunate enough to travel to over 40 countries, and actually 6 of the 7 continents. So I'm excited to soon get the other one off my bucket list. But I think that really has shifted a lot of kind of my mentality across like worldly things, understanding different cultures, understanding how I'm viewed across many different dimensions, which I think is a privilege, but is something that I think has definitely shaped who I am.
Absolutely. And I think Chicago is a great place for that, especially considering the diversity of
Yeah.
people, also just like access to airports, which makes it really great for micro trips as well. I always said Chicago is one of my top 3 cities of places to move if I were to leave New York City.
I've converted many people. So if you ever need a bump on like you want to move to Chicago, I will get you there.
Yes, yes. So I would love to hear even more in terms of what was your experience like growing up as a Black woman in Florida, and how does it compare to living in Chicago now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say it's completely different. I would say also I would incorporate my experience in Florida. We actually lived in a pretty diverse area. So I think that, not a lot of people actually hear that. I think I went to college at Duke University in North Carolina, and that was like kind of the first time I was put in a position where like, oh no, you are the definite minority here. And I know it's a predominantly white institution, so that is something that is a part of the experience, but it was in a different way. I think, there's aspects of imposter syndrome that showed up for me, and just aspects of, pushing for yourself to be kind of like front of the class. So I think that's really where the story started to kind of diverge into, oh, this is something that is, different. I'm very different. And I think that was the first time that I was actually like exposed to that, because growing up in Florida, we actually lived in a really diverse community. We were around, lots of different folks. And also with the traveling, I felt like I was already introduced to a lot more than maybe normal. But I think college was really where I was like, okay, you are the minority. Moving to Chicago, I think opened back up that kind of floodgate of diversity, like you said. I feel like Chicago, there's over 77 neighborhoods here, all with their own kind of architectural culture and background. And you can move from one to another without even knowing that you've done that. Like, it's just so quick how quickly you can go through all the different neighborhoods here. And I love that. I love any place where you've got just like a cultural explosion. But there's definitely been, I think, times growing up One thing specifically, I think growing up, I actually had the opportunity in college to go to a all-girls school in Kenya. We taught there for 2 months over the summer. It was an amazing experience. Many of the girls now women that we taught there, I still communicate with quarterly. They give me updates, and I loved that experience. But that was an experience that actually kind of shifted my perspective just on me as a Black traveler, me as a Black woman, because you think you're going to Africa. It's like, I'm going to be welcome. This is like my roots. And, you want to learn a little bit more about that. And when I was there, they called me like a Mzungu, which means like in Swahili, like white or foreigner. So that was just like another cultural shift, because I was like, this was my sophomore year in college. So it was like freshman year was all about like, you are the minority. You are so different. And then I get to Africa and I'm like, oh my goodness, now I don't even belong here. So it's that sense of belonging. And I think that's something that I'm actually like interested to even get deeper into, and understanding some of those like cultural roots and how travel can kind of transform that. I say that just to say, I think that was a definite aspect on my journey of just like understanding like how, who you are as a Black woman and what that looks like in different countries around the world.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think we forget that context means everything in terms of how you are received. And so when you're talking about you grew up, in a diverse community, I think about New York, it's pretty diverse, but it's also very segregated. So I know I had a similar experience to you in terms of like growing up in a diverse area, but then going to a predominantly white institution at Columbia. While it's the same city, it felt like a huge culture shock in terms of what I was walking into. And then what does that look like then when you take yourself into different countries where sometimes you feel that sense of belonging immediately, that everyone looks like me, and then there's other times where you can feel very isolated.
Yeah, I love the tie back to context and culture shock, but I think culture shock is also an aspect of learning, and every single time that's happened, it's a deeper understanding of myself. So I don't want to, be fearful of being in shock of something,
Yes, no, absolutely. I think it's important in terms of some of the shock. I think is also just a mental shift that needs to happen for us, and also just think about like, how does our body regulate itself when it enters a new context, regardless of who the population is there. And I think travel teaches us to be able to adapt and be flexible very quickly. Were there any key moments that stand out to you living in Chicago that signify your Black experience?
I think it all goes back to that kind of that culture shock, that, concept that we're kind of running through. I would say Chicago is a very diverse city, but it's also extremely segregated, and something that, a lot of folks that move here, they will mention that to you. And I think, understanding, wanting to be close to obviously my job, where I need to be as far as, commute and things like that versus seeking community was something that I definitely took into consideration when looking for my long-term home here, just because it is something that's like, oh, well, if you come to downtown Chicago, you would never know just how much cultural diversification there is in the city, to be quite honest with you. I think I hear that a lot from people who visit for the first time. They're very confused. And that's why I do say, when you come, try to explore at least 2 different neighborhoods. It doesn't have to be just, what they call the loop, which is just like the downtown area. Spend your day there, but then spend some time learning about some of the other different areas in the city as well. But I would say to me, a moment there is just, trying to figure out where should I position myself in the city in order to definitely still have community, but also be close to, my needs and things like that. So I think that was kind of a defining experience and understanding like, where do I fit in this city? Because, I had no background here. I have no family here. So it was kind of like my choice.
If you are enjoying learning about the Black experience, explore more on my blog. I share traveling while Black reflections from Vermont to Iceland and beyond, including vibes, safety, and comfort based on my Support Black scorecard. Visit frannythetraveler.com for more. No, that makes sense. I'm curious how that approach then translates to how you travel, especially on these micro trips. The idea of not only checking out the downtown or the tourist area, but then also potentially checking out other neighborhoods as well.
So I have a whole method to how I like to kind of plan trips, and we can get into that as well. But I would say this kind of reminds me of one thing that I try to speak about a lot, especially when planning itineraries, and that is choosing what I like to call an anchoring experience. So that usually is some sort of tour, some type of situation where you are mingling with locals, you're getting out on the town, but something where you're able to like intentionally experience a place beyond just kind of going and checking off those tourist destinations. I try to plan at least one of those in each of the destinations that I go to. Obviously, you can do hundreds of them and people will often say, well, you could have done this and this, but that is my way to kind of just connect back to, okay, what are the people here doing? So there's tons of anchoring experiences that I could tell you about in Chicago that I would recommend doing beyond just like, the regular things that you could do downtown. But I think that's the best way to experience a place is, of course, doing all your tourist attractions, but then trying to connect with the community. It can be a 2-hour tour or something like that, but at least getting a little bit of understanding of the people who are around you.
I love that you use the term anchoring experiences. I also just love terminology in travel. And so now I'm like, okay, we are going to use that for sure. And definitely when we go into the travel roundup, I will definitely be asking some of your anchoring experiences in Chicago. Yes. Microtrip is also another term that I feel like has gained a trend in travel. And so for listeners who may not actually know what microtrip means, how would you define that?
Yeah. So I have, I think, a pretty niche way to explain it. But for me, a microtrip is really a short, intentional getaway. That is a getaway in which you are not just saying, can I do this? Can I actually make this happen? It's you made it happen. You were able to experience the destination in a real way, and you were able to save your time and your money. So I think that could extend to for example, a micro trip that I'm going on next week. I'm going to San Diego for the weekend for 2 days. That's something where we have a full itinerary built out with different neighborhoods and things like that we're going to go check out. A micro trip, another example, is we went to Italy and Turkey for 5 days. Now, it's not a weekend, but it's still a micro trip because we were able to get in and get out of 3 different cities in Italy, into 2 different destinations in Turkey in that amount of time. And we did feel like we were able to get a lot done. So I think it can kind of change depending on, you can actually have a 2-week micro trip as well if you wanted to, but it's how you experience the city. It's how you move about the itinerary. And that to me is what makes it a micro trip.
It sounds like a reoccurring theme. It's just like the maximizing of time, like trying to do the most with the little time that you have. I think for me, what I've realized through my years of micro trips, I tend to place them in 4 different categories. So my first category is a day trip. It might be 12 to 16 hours. That doesn't require any lodging. You're not taking luggage with you. In one end, it might be just a city over, but for some other people, it's like getting on a flight to another country. Like you might go New York to Puerto Rico, for example.
I've seen this, yes.
And I think there's like extreme day tripping that's happening these days. My next is an overnighter. So that's just 24 hours. It requires you to do lodging. So it might be Friday night to Saturday, but that usually would probably make your trip somewhere between like 24 and 36 hours where you have 2 days to touch on. Then there's your typical weekend trip where, you might have flew out Friday night, you're back by Sunday evening, you're at work Monday morning. And then the last is like the longer weekend or the extended trip. So that's usually a 3 to 5 days length of time. And depending on where you go, it really may be a micro trip. Because to your point, if you're going to Europe, that definitely is going to be needing to maximize your time within that 4 to 5 days.
I love that. I love these 4 new terms that I've got: overnighter, a day tripper.
That's the educator in me always trying to classify things. I'm curious in terms of where do most of your micro trips fall in when you think of those categories?
Yeah, I would say definitely the weekend trip. So the third one that you mentioned, or the 3 to 5 day, just because of scheduling, because like Friday night, anytime I've got a Friday night to a Sunday available, those are what I'm looking for. And then the 3 to 5 days for anything a little bit longer. We're looking to go a little bit farther, but we're trying to maximize time, like you said. I haven't done any true day trips. Like I've seen the extreme day tripping, and maybe I need to try one. To be honest with you, it's on my bucket list to do, but like, I'll just fly to Iceland for the day and come back tonight. But we can
Yes, I haven't gone to that extreme, but to your point, that sounds like an amazing bucket list to
Yeah.
at least try once. Like I've done, like New York to Philly, but that's that dramatic of a day trip.
Oh no, I love that. Yeah, I think it's definitely on the bucket list. I need to get into the day tripping and the overnighter.
Yes, yes. And so I think this is great because when we're thinking of this podcast for season 1, we're trying to unpack just what does it mean to reimagine how we experience place? What does it mean to be in movement differently? And so how do you think a micro trip helps travelers move through places differently compared to a longer trip?
Yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons. I think more pros than cons, to be honest with you. So I think the first one is definitely just the mindset, right? So I think a lot of people are like, you get back to work, you're like, oh, I cannot wait until December when I can go on my week-long cruise. And I'm like, no, like you can go somewhere tomorrow. You can go somewhere this weekend. So I think it's really always having something to look forward to is one of the biggest pros to me because, we're at these jobs, it's a lot, and I think we're suffering from burnout. I always like having something to look forward to, even something to look forward to in my day-to-day life. But, in my kind of like my realm of like get up and go, I always want something there to say, this is what I'm heading towards next. The second one is, I think actually, like you said, the money, right? I think it's actually more cost effective in a lot of ways to travel like this. I mean, when you think about it, typically anytime I'm doing these trips, I'm only traveling with my backpack. So I'm not adding additional expenses for baggage. It's only 1 to 2 nights of hotels. So when you think about it like that, it's pretty cost effective, or a rental car only 1 day or 2 days. And then I do think when you think about it, your life doesn't have to be on pause. Like when I think about a vacation and 2-week vacation, it's like my out of office is up. I'm having to board the dog for 3 weeks. I'm having to just like shut down my entire life in order to take a vacation, which sometimes we need to do. Like I believe in rest. I believe in recuperating, but that's not really what this is. I have a dog. So anytime I go on these trips, I'm asking like maybe a friend or something, hey, can you watch him for a day? That's different than like, can you watch him for 2 weeks? That I'm having to that's a lot more. I'm also in an MBA program part-time, so I do evening classes, evening and weekend actually sometimes. So again, like I can't take off a full week, and then I also have classes that I'm missing and things like that during the week. So there's a lot more constraints that are there, I think, when you're thinking about trying to travel long-term that maybe people aren't thinking about. I also think they're easier to plan. When I think about it, I would be seemingly overwhelmed if I had to plan something for 2 weeks. I mean, I like planning, so I don't think I would ever get a travel agent, but I can see why someone would want that because it's a long trip to plan. But if you can figure out something to do in 2 days, I think that is like definitely something anyone can do. And I can also help you do. I try to post as many of my itineraries as possible just to show people that it's possible. But I think those are some of the benefits definitely of micro travel. And when you're thinking about, does this fit in my lifestyle? Like if any of those resonate for you, I think that that's definitely a reason why you should try it out.
Absolutely. I'm curious in terms of what you're hearing from your audience or what typically is holding them back from traveling and also just taking the leap to take that micro trip.
Yeah, I would say definitely finances come up a lot. And that's why I also try to, I try to post a lot more of the how. I think people, they come onto social media, they either want to discover, they want to plan, or they want to book something. And so I think discovery content is always fun to watch. It's something that is just like, I want to be inspired, but I really want to post content that's going to inspire people to plan something or book something. So that's really where I'm trying to kind of share with people the kind of logistics behind it so that it seems more attainable. But I think cost is a barrier. I think, you're always going to get, well, you didn't experience everything. You didn't see this. You didn't see that. It's like, I can go back. I'll see that next time. And that tends to get people a little bit more like, oh, you're right. You could just go back. So I think those are kind of the two biggest barriers that I see a lot just in my comments and my DMs and things like that.
No, that makes sense. And I'm also curious of what are some cons on the flip side of a micro trip that people need to weigh when deciding, do I take a micro trip or do I take a longer trip?
So when I'm also choosing destinations, I'm typically choosing destinations where the logistics make a little bit more sense. So when we're going to Boston, the airport is literally 15 minutes away from like the city center. That means once I get on the ground, I can almost leap right to the city center and get to some of my activities. When we went to Colorado, we did do this in a weekend, but I don't think I would recommend like my Colorado weekend trip to just anyone because we drove for like 8 hours just like around different areas. And it's like, that is like time consuming. And I can see why someone would be like, no to this experience. I've got my fiance. I was like, hey, we're going all these places, but I can understand why that would be a turnoff. So I think a con is definitely like a type of destination that just takes a long time logistically to get around. That's when you're probably going to need to have more time. Somewhere where you're going to have some sort of maybe language barrier. That's definitely, I think, a destination where you might need a little bit more time, or you might need to enlist help from a tour agency or something like that that can help you get through. I went to Japan. My grandparents went with me. We went and we did Tokyo in 3 days, and I have an itinerary about that. And the planning of that was just completely different than anything I've done, in the US, because it's like, okay, if we want to get this done, we want to see what we want to see. We're actually going to need to get a tour guide. We're going to need to get a car, because I know a lot of people like to do Japan and they walk around and it takes a long time. But I was like, if we need to do this in a micro trip, we're going to need a car. So we were able to hire a guide to help us do that. He, shared with us all the information. It was a really great experience. But again, it's something that people need to consider. It's just like, you can't just book the trip without understanding what the destination really looks like and how you are going to move through it.
It sounds like there's a lot of nuances when trying to select a destination, but ultimately any way that you could keep the trip simple is the best bet. What would be some questions that listeners should ask themselves when deciding, is this destination good for a micro trip?
That's a really great question. The thing that I would ask myself is, can I find a nonstop flight there from my home airport? That's one of the biggest things that it's really important when you're doing these short trips, because you're one delay away from it incredibly impacting your trip, especially when you're going for such a short amount of time. If I'm going somewhere for 2 weeks, my bag gets lost and my flight is delayed, 10 hours, I'm kind of like, that's fine. Life happens and we can be flexible. But if that happens on the micro trip, it's like, I might as well not, I just can't go. So I would say, can I find a nonstop flight from this destination? Is this a drivable destination? Is this something that's walkable? Or am I going to need, like I said, an additional tour guide? And I think all of those questions, they don't necessarily mean you can't do it. It just means you have to, change your approach to how you are going to attack the destination. Because I've done all three of those types of questions in a micro trip, and there's ways to do them. And then I would say the third one is just understanding cost and associated costs in the area. So is this a destination that has a lot of just kind of sights to see? Or is this a destination that's more museum heavy? Or is it more activity driven? And understanding that for yourself. I mean, if you're like, I want to do the hot air, you're in Mexico City, I want to do the hot air balloon, then I want to go over here to do the Luce Libre tour, then I want to, that's an activity based place. Whereas I think Chicago, you can literally, if you come in the summer, don't do the winter if you want to do the walk around method. I've got an itinerary for Chicago in the winter, but if you want to walk around, come in the summer, and you can just walk around and just, look around, and that would be fine as well. So I think it's understanding just kind of what are the types of things to do, and potentially also thinking about your budget when you do that as well, because a lot of the other weekend trips that maybe are more walkable, maybe you don't need to spend any additional money on just kind of your itinerary, because it's just things to see and do.
And that also is making me think of just also proximity of the activities that you're doing too, because if you have to travel, it can be done, but it eats up time if you're going to have to travel 2 to 3 hours to get to an activity and back.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's definitely something to think about. I can share more about the kind of destination that kind of started the micro trips for us, but that was one of the main, I think, wins for us for that destination was all the activities were super close together.
Yes. Tell us, what is the destination that sparked it all?
Well, the destination that started the micro trips for me was actually Dublin, Ireland. So I am in a long distance relationship. I met my now fiance here in Chicago, but he finished medical school and was shipped to Pennsylvania to complete his residency. So that, meant that we had, anytime we had to see each other, we had to travel to each other. So it was either he would come to Chicago or I would go to Pennsylvania. And honestly, we just kind of got tired of that. We were like, why can't we just make this into an adventure? If we have to travel to see each other, why can't we just go somewhere new and experience a new place? So I had the idea for that. And then I was like, well, how about Dublin? I see nonstop flights from there, from Philadelphia. Why can't we make that happen? And I was like, I've got the tickets. The airport was literally like 15 minutes from the city center. I made a perfect itinerary, a perfect loop. I was like, we're going to get everything done in this amount of time. So we had 26 hours on the ground. We left on a Friday night and got back on a Sunday night.
Wow. To do that within a weekend, that's amazing. Were you flying out of Chicago for that flight specifically?
So what I actually did, I flew to Chicago to Philadelphia, and then after work he joined me because the flight was at like 9 p.m. So I took like a 5 p.m. flight, got there, and then we went to Dublin together.
Got it. That makes sense. But just thinking from the Northeast in general, getting to Ireland is fairly easy. So I think that goes back to proximity, because if you're on the Northeast, doing weekenders and long weekend trips to Europe is fairly easy, right? But if you're coming from the West Coast, that you're not going to aim for Europe or the Caribbean, but you could aim for Hawaii, for example. Yeah. But this is making me wonder. So for someone who lives in a small airport hub compared to us who are from Chicago and New York, what advice can you offer them of how they can still do a micro trip when they might not have as many flights available?
So I would say, I would look at your closest larger airports and understand, what if I drive to that larger airport to kind of get me on my way, especially if you're able to find flight deals. So my fiance, he actually lives in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So he is always looking for flights out of Philadelphia, which is an hour and a half drive. There's now an airport in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. There's one in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Those are regional airports, so those can get you to your bigger airports. Or he will go to BWI, which is like an hour and a half. Or he'll take the train to New York to do out of JFK or EWR, I believe as well. So I think that's also a testament of like, I've been there, I'm in that situation, he's in that situation where he's not flying, he doesn't have a large airport, right next to him. Like, I take the train to O'Hare and I'm like, I'm there in 10 minutes and I'm here, ready to go. So that's a testament to, it still works, but it's just a little bit of additional work that it takes. But I love that he has all those airports around him, because I'm always like, well, let me check BWI and let me check Philadelphia and let me check. So there's actually like more opportunity if you think about it in some areas, because now I'm like expanding my bubble. But I call those kind of like skip flights to be able to get to your bigger airports. And then also, if you do live next to a regional airport, I still feel like another option is just, I think out of the Harrisburg airport, they go to Boston, they go to Orlando, they go to Atlanta. Those are still great destinations to go to for a weekend. I think it doesn't have to be your bucket list trip that you had on your list, for 40 years. It just has, you want to just go experience a new city for the weekend.
Yeah, if there's a will, there's a way, but it all starts again with the mindset shift of this is something that is possible to do in a weekend.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I actually made like a short ebook on kind of my method to weekend trips. I call it like the flow method. And the first chapter of the book is just about mindset shift, because I think that that's kind of like the biggest hurdle, and that everything kind of just falls into place, not falls into place, but it's just more actionable after you're able to kind of shift your mind of like, instead of going out, to drinks with friends, to that really expensive brunch, you could have been on a flight to somewhere else. We're like, my fiance and I were always measuring things in the price of a ticket to Dublin. We're like, well, we could have went to Dublin 3 times for that. So we're just rather do that.
I think it goes back to your values. Like, I actually had this conversation with someone I know from high school of, I'm not one who tends to do Uber rides. I prefer to just use, the New York City Metro card. But that's because I'm always comparing everything to an Amtrak ticket somewhere or to a flight. And I'm like, wait, this Uber ride would have been the equivalent of a round trip to Philadelphia for the day,
I love it. Yeah,
it's like if I got away, I'm like, yeah, I will take a little longer on that subway ride.
Exactly. No, I love that.
I actually wanted to circle back. What is this flow method that you continue to refer to? Let us know.
Yeah, so the flow method, like I mentioned, the F is flights. So I think it's just mindset shift of like, it's not where I want to go. It's like, what destination is coming to me? What destination makes sense during my time and for my budget? So that's number one. And in the book, it's not a full book, talk about different Google Flights methods that you can use, filtering how to get to those different destinations. So that's number one. The next thing is L is lodging. So getting your hotel secured. I always recommend for the micro trips or the weekend trips, more specifically, hotels over Airbnbs, just because of the timing. So you might be getting in early in the morning. Those Airbnb Airbnbs, you can't check in until like at a certain time. So you want to have somewhere where you can at least drop the bag. You can't check into the hotel, but you want to drop the bag and have somewhere where you can put your luggage so you can get on with your day. So I usually recommend hotels, and I give some different methods to get hotels with points. And then O is outing. So that's where you're doing your like anchoring experience. You're booking at least one of those for every weekend trip. So a lot of the times for me, I love food tours. I absolutely love food tours, especially because I don't want to choose one restaurant because people are like, oh, this is the best restaurant in San Diego. But I'm like, well, I tried 5, instead, like you tried 5 in 2 hours instead. So I thought that I always love those. But you can do anything. So I give a lots of different examples of different outings and anchoring experiences. And then the W is wrap it all up. So I love to use Wanderlog. That's where I plan all of my trips. So I drop in all of the destinations, and it kind of gives you like a map. So you can see what things are close to each other, and you can organize it and say, okay, this is a 5-minute walk from here, and just kind of like place everything in the kind of order that you want to see them. So that's kind of the flow method that I use for all my weekend trips.
Love that. And we will definitely put in the notes, any links to your ebook that people can get. This is great. Again, love a good framework as an educator. But I think the one that definitely sticks out is the W, because what I realize is so much time gets wasted if you don't know how close things are. I'm actually planning a day trip to Cape May, New Jersey with a couple of people. And then I realized some of the destinations were literally a minute away from each other. I didn't realize we were in like that clutch proximity to things. But then there's other things where do I want to drive out 20 minutes not knowing what parking is going to look like, you know?
Yeah. So I love just being able to just see it so that you can say, okay, maybe this is my day 1, this is day 2, like how we plan San Diego. It's like, we have like little kind of batches of things to do in each little area. And say, okay, day 1, day 2, day 3, and then that's it. So it's really helpful just to get everything on one place.
That makes sense. And I think for bigger cities, especially Chicago and New York, that is absolutely necessary. I'm going to need you to not spend, something in Manhattan in an hour train line to Brooklyn, and then you're in the Bronx next. So
yeah, and people see all these recommendations online. I think I use Wanderlog, and I'll scroll through social media a little bit and get recommendations as well, and I think it's helpful. But just putting them on the map, and then I'll come back and I'll say, okay, well that's got to go, or this has got to move, because it's really helpful to see how does this fit into like my plan. Because I think people see this and they're like, oh, well, just follow this exact thing. It's like, no, they did those things in 4 days,
right? And they're curating that for you online into one, right? Yeah. It's true. The other thing I wanted to ask before we transition to just your experience traveling, I know you also have some cheat codes around destination stacking or destination pairing. So could you elaborate a little bit? What is that? And what is an example of that in action?
So I would say the first method, and just kind of like the flow method for taking more weekend trips, taking more micro trips, is that it starts with the F is for flights. That means that we are not saying, oh, Akylah, I want to go to Minnesota this weekend because I saw that there's this nice concert going on and things like that. It's saying, no, I'm just going to do a broad search for what destinations can I get to from Chicago this weekend, and go with what the cheapest is, that fits in your time and your, budget constraints. So it's just kind of opening up your mind. I think that's the biggest hack of like, well, that's open, that's available. Instead of thinking, this is exactly where I want to go. It just opens your mind up to just more destinations in general. But I think related to the destination pairing, that really gets involved with the like 3 to 5 day trips that we were talking about, those longer, or maybe even 5 to 7 day trips. Anytime I'm going on a trip like that, I'm still in my micro trip mindset. I'm not like, I just booked a flight to Greece and I'm going to sit in Athens every single day. It's like, no. You've got to expand. What else, what other, like if I'm over there, I want to get a lot done. That's kind of my mindset. So you have to bring that same mindset even to some of your longer term travel. So I think that's where that kind of like 2-in-1 trip idea came from. So when we went to Portugal, we went to both Porto and Lisbon, right? Like why not just do both? When we did Italy, we actually used another hack that I really enjoyed doing with those longer trips, which is a stopover program. So Iceland Air has one. We used one through Turkish Airlines. So we were able to stop over in Istanbul for a day and then continue over into Milan. We took a day trip from Milan to Venice, then we took a day trip from Milan to Lake Como. So it's just kind of like, how can you organize this in a way where you are still, like you said, maximizing that time on the ground? So I think a lot of people think, I've got my round trip flight from here to here, but I'm always like, how can I fit something else in there? Actually, my mom and I are doing, I think, this to the max in the next few months. So I'm super excited to share all the content, but we're doing a Scandinavian adventure, I would have to say, in 5 days in 4 countries.
Wow. That makes sense though, because I mean, first of all, Scandinavia is expensive already. So
Yes.
you want to maximize your time, but also these countries are in very close proximity to each
Right.
other, because that's like reminding me, I think when I went to Oslo, Norway, I ended up taking a day trip through one of those bus excursions to Sweden.
Yeah, and I think a good hack, like you said, is the destination pairing, but also the day tripping when you're like in a certain destination. So I've taken so many of these. I did a day trip in Peru. We went out, like, I think it was like a 6-hour drive that they took us. We went to like the sand dunes and we saw the seals, and we went to like a whole other area in Peru. We also did a day trip to Mount Fuji when we were in Japan. I did a day trip in Guatemala. So anytime where you can just like take that extra leap, just, might as well just have a day, set aside. We said, okay, we're going to spend 2 days in the city, and then third day, let's do a day trip.
Oh, so with all of these methods and tips and tricks that you're using, how many trips are you typically taking in a year?
So I have not counted. I just have started putting all of my maps and itineraries on my site, just because I was like, I need to condense this. I need to just have this, available for folks. I think I've got like 15 on there now, but in a year, I do have on my vision board, at least for this year, to visit 12 new countries. So that's on the list. So it's got to happen. But I would say, what's a healthy amount of weekend trips? Probably last year, I think we did like 8.
That seems reasonable when I think about it. Like, I think of like my prime time when I was full micro trip queen. It came out to about 12 a year, because you think on average about once a month, whether it's like a 3-day weekend that is because we had a federal holiday, or you have Thanksgiving in November or Christmas. So I think once a month is a decent way, right? 1 out of 4 weeks you're taking something.
I love it. Yes. I love it. I think that's a great way to think about it, actually.
So it could be a weekend trip. It could be a day trip, right?
Take one of your 4, your day tripper, your overnighter, your weekend trip, or your 3 to 5 day. We don't care. Just fit it in.
Exactly. You need something to look forward to,
Yes.
is what we're telling you. So transitioning, as you're moving through destinations so quickly, I'm just curious, what has been your experience traveling as a Black woman through so many destinations?
I think this is a great question, and it kind of goes back to that like context and that culture shock. I would actually say this could be, to some, a pro of some of the quick travel, because to be honest with you, we're moving so quickly. There's not really time to sit and, interact with folks on a deep level where I'm feeling uncomfortable because of just how quick, the motions are going through. So I think some people have asked me on some of the weekend trip videos, well, how are you, how did people think of you? And what did you like, what was the vibe? And I was like, honestly, we were moving so quickly, we were in and out. In some destinations, I might recommend that might be the plan, right? If there's, some cultural tensions and things like that, you still deserve to see the world. And I would still say, I really don't like when folks, fear monger over certain destinations and say, don't do this, don't do that, don't go here as a Black traveler, because I believe, if there's a will and you have the funds and the means to go, I just say go and experience it for yourself. But I mean, there could be an element of it. You might want to do a shorter trip, just because of potential if you might be uncomfortable in that destination. But I would say, to me, as a Black traveler, the micro trips are a little bit of a hack to get in and get out, especially if maybe destinations that you've heard aren't as welcoming and things like that. But again, I think with my background and just having so much travel under my belt, it's something that kind of just comes in and out for me, because I've been in a lot of destinations where I've had to kind of shift my mindset. One of the biggest ones, I think, when I was in high school, we went to India. It was my mom and my grandparents and I. And that was the first time that my grandmother had actually said, I think after we came back, she was like, I think I actually might need to go to therapy. just because of the amount of culture shock that, we had experienced and we were exposed to. It was just, and you hear this online all the time of just like, staring, folks were asking for pictures with us. People are in their cars looking at us in our car, just driving by, couldn't even focus on the road. Just like, we are so different, that type of feeling. So I'm used to that. I think it's just like something that I'm used to. So I think, especially when kind of moving through these destinations so quickly, it's kind of back of mind. I think it's really important to me to be able to understand the culture there, understand the history. If there is a Black history experience in any area, I do try to invest time in doing that. So like, I think there was a Black history tour when it was either Porto or Lisbon. I forgot which one, but we were able to go on that tour. So I do try to invest time in learning about the journeys that have happened before me there, but I don't try to spend time on saying I don't want to go here or I don't want to experience this thing.
There's so many things. I don't even know where to begin because that you named that were gems. But I think one of the things it makes me think of is that, someone else's experience may not be your experience. So it is important for you to take that trip and assess for yourself. Yes. Is this going to be a place that you fall in love with? Or is this a place where it's like a one and done destination? And right, exactly. You don't have to go back. You also have the free will to decide, okay, this is not working for me. I'm going to leave this trip earlier too, right? Like no one is like committing to that. But I think doing the research on the culture ahead of time, as you're saying, will help you decide, is this more worthy of doing a micro trip where I'm just like in and out to just get a taste of it? Or is this a place that I know that I'm more likely to fall in love with? And so I'm going to want to extend my time there.
Yes.
You also talk about India, and I think similar to your grandmother, it is an experience where your nervous system is just right? It is on 100. And I think for me, it gave me perspective, I think, on what truly is a first world problem versus what is not. But I think for most people coming into it, there is a lot of adjustment that needs to happen. So you can go about this in the way where you're like, I just want a short dose of it just because it's so overwhelming, or I want to spend longer to give myself time for my body to regulate into what this is.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I love the just thinking to yourself, like, how long do I want to spend here? I think it's more, instead of do I want to go here, it's like, well, how much time do I want to give myself here? And I like that reframing because I think, travel creators, they're coming up, they're everywhere. And I love watching travel content. I watch so much travel content, not my own, but like other people on YouTube. It's just one of my favorite things to do. But I think it's great because people are getting to see the destinations, before they go. But there's so much information out there that some people can actually use that to avoid certain situations and scenarios. So I try whenever I'm, creating content and things like that, I'm like, I'm going to give you the information, but I'm not going to, I try not to share as much about some of maybe the thoughts and the feelings and things like that, just because I don't want to, deter someone from having their own experience.
Yeah, that is very important because I know that literally can make or break what type of experience people have. For me personally, I tend to share thoughts and feelings more on my blog versus my Instagram. So longer form content versus shorter content. But I always make a disclaimer. This is from the perspective of a Black American woman. So take it and leave it for what it is. And also know that my perspective may not be your experience as well. But I don't like to, encourage or discourage people for any location. So when people are like, oh, these are the places I would avoid, it's not a matter of avoiding or not. It's just like, I just want you to be informed of what the experience could be.
No, I love that. I think, and I actually think that that's great that you also have that, ability to share that on the longer form content to kind of get in those weeds and the details. Cause I think it's important, but I think it's great of just like not on the quick doses where people are just discovering and people who know you, who've seen your content. I think that's great. I would love to pursue something like that.
Yes, because I think what happens with short form content, sometimes it becomes clickbait. I've seen the rage bait. You don't have the space to ask you questions about what happened here. And so getting 30 seconds or a minute to judge an entire country doesn't feel and sit right with me either.
Yeah.
Considering this, I would love to know, what are some locations where do you feel most belonging? And were there any locations where maybe you felt a little more of that discomfort or hypervisibility?
Yeah, I would say not so much on the weekend trips. Belonging, though, is always brought back to me in the kind of city plus water feature. And anytime I see that, I'm like, okay, I can move.
Fair. For me, I love a major city. You're going to get me. And like you said, if there's a beautiful view in the process, I'm
It's
sold.
like suddenly I can live here. I belong, So I always, the places that I would want to move abroad. I think I do have a goal of doing that one day. Would definitely be Portugal or Sydney, Australia. Anywhere in Portugal and Sydney, Australia specifically. Both of those I've absolutely loved and fallen in love with. As far as places, not in the US. And I think my US belt is actually, I'm only at like 50%. I've got a lot of states to check off. So I've got a lot of work to do there. So I'd have to come back with you if I'm like, this didn't feel good, especially like with context of like how I felt in international destinations, but nowhere where I felt extremely, uncomfortable. Of course, there's people who can make you uncomfortable, but I'm saying like more of like the city or the destination has not set right with me. But there's crazy people everywhere. So
No, I appreciate you making that distinction, because I think sometimes we take one experience or one person to represent an entire city or country. I think that's very different if you have repeatable
yeah,
experiences during your trip.
maybe that's why with the micro trips, it's like it can't be that repeatable because it's like, well, I was only here for 24 hours. So it only really happened one time. So maybe that's an aspect of it as well. But I agree. Yeah, I would, just because you didn't have a nice experience with the hotel manager doesn't mean that's reflective of the city.
So I think this is a good transition for us to go into the Black Travel Roundup. And so this is my favorite part of the show, where this is your curated guide for destinations. So we're going to do US micro trips as the focus here. But before we get into the rapid fire portion, I would first love to ask you, what is a micro trip in the United States that you think every Black traveler should take, and why?
Okay, I'm gonna have to do this one just because it's so close to my heart, and it's Chicago. I think you have to come here at least once. Every single time I post about Chicago, people like flood the comments like, "Oh, we love Chicago," and I'm like, yeah, who doesn't love Chicago? So I think every Black traveler should come to Chicago, especially with the opening of the new Obama Presidential Center. So many people have been asking me about itineraries around there as well. So it's a perfect time to come and see the city. Like I said, as far as like anchoring experiences, I think going to see the Presidential Center, but also just going around Hyde Park area. There is a really great restaurant down there called Virtue that I always recommend people go to. There's a few Black history museums down there that I've been to. There's a Black bus tour that they do around the south side of Chicago that I would recommend. There used to be a walking tour that I had taken. It was on Get Your Guide, but I went and looked for it the other week, and I don't see it anymore, unfortunately. So I can't plug that one, but there'll probably be another one that pops up around here soon. But I think the Black bus tour would be great as well, especially if folks don't want to walk. It's really accessible for folks as well, too.
Yes, I definitely need to look at that. I'm also long overdue to revisiting Chicago. And so this is motivating me to get on that. I'm curious, if you had to give us a weekend itinerary for Chicago, what would that look like? What are some of the prime anchoring experiences we should include? Where are we eating? What are we doing?
There's just so much. I've created like 3 itineraries for Chicago just because it's just like you can have so many different experiences depending on if it's your first time, if you're coming with family, if you're coming during the winter. But I would say, what I always say is, if this is your first time in Chicago, your first day will be on what I call like the trifecta downtown. So just get all your tourist stuff out the way, go see the Bean, go to Navy Pier, and do your river cruise. So the architecture cruise in Chicago, everyone's going to tell you about it. I would recommend definitely doing that, but I would do the extended version. So I would do one that goes to both the river and also you go out on Lake Michigan, because a lot of people just do the architecture river portion, which is great as well. But the lake and river, you get the architecture cruise and you get to see like skyline views out on the lake, which is absolutely amazing. They also have a lot of Black history tidbits on the architecture cruise because we're involved in everything, as we know. So I think that's a great tour for everyone to get at least a little bit of a sneak peek into Chicago. So I would do that on my first day. I would just do the trifecta, just spend all your time in the loop. The second day that you're here, if you're doing a weekend trip, the second day that you're here, like I was mentioned, there's 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. So I would say choose 2 of those and just experience that little pocket of Chicago. So 2 that I recommend to most folks would just be like, you can go to Chinatown, or you can go to West Loop, which is more like trendy. You've got restaurants in downtown, or Hyde Park now. Go visit the Obama Presidential Center. You can also there are beautiful houses down in Hyde Park. You can just go walk around, and they're all from, Black affluent historians and writers. There's just so much great architecture down there as well. So I would recommend doing that. As far as where to eat, there's just too much good food. Virtue is great. I like Luella's. It's up on the north side. It's like Southern fried chicken. I believe downtown, that's where things get a little bit more difficult, because I feel like you've got to start going outside the loop for the great food.
The one that actually has seasoning, right?
Exactly. And you could do the deep dish and things like that.
Yeah.
Giordano's. I actually like Detroit style pizza more, but those are some of my favorite spots. And then there's another great area that I would recommend for Black travelers called Bronzeville. And that's another very Black history rich area. And they've got Bronzeville Winery, which is a Black-owned place down there. And there's also, I forgot what the name of there's a really great dessert place down there, but I have to remember the name of it, but also in Bronzeville, and it's delicious.
All right. So I clearly have my itinerary already. Right. So I need to just choose a time when to make this happen,
Yes.
which I'm actually thinking next year, because the WITS conference is happening in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I was like, I need to add on Chicago to this.
Yeah, no, Beth, I think the first one that she ever did was here in Chicago, because she went to Northwestern, because she went to Kellogg, which is where I'm at now. So I met Beth through Kellogg, and she was saying the first one was here in Chicago.
Awesome. Yes. And so now we're going to get into the rapid fire of this. And so again, we're going to focus on US micro trips. So whatever comes to mind, don't overthink it. If you can't think of just one, you are allowed 2 to 3 recommendations within this category.
Okay.
So first is best micro trip for Black culture.
I would have to say either Chicago or New Orleans. I don't know if I want to use both of those now, but I think both of those are good for Black culture. Yeah, I'll go with those.
All right, we're sitting with that. If you decide to change back later, let us know. Best for Black food.
Okay, New Orleans is back on the list, because so good as far as the food. New York as well.
I was thinking that.
It's like so many things, I don't want to say are gate kept, but they're just like the good. I'm just like, you have to know what you're doing. So that's where I would say. But I feel like New Orleans is a little bit open, where it's like, okay, you can go here, but.
No, you're right, because I think New York has so many options. It could go really bad or really good really quickly. So.
You get one recommendation, it's like, that wasn't the one that you were supposed to go to. I'm like, okay.
Facts. Best micro trip for Black history.
Oh, okay. I would say DC. Yeah, DC's got it all. I mean, the African American History Museum they say that takes 2 days, and I was like, of course, in my micro trip era, I was like, it's gonna take me 3 hours.
That will humble you.
I was like, I've done 1 floor. It's time to go.
Which is actually what happened to me on a micro trip in DC. I was like, this is one of those, like, I gotta come back because I can't do it in one micro trip.
They gave me like a pamphlet, and they were like, yeah, this is our 2-day itinerary. I was like, for this one building? No.
Yes, that's good. And it also, because there's all these other Smithsonian museums too that you can check out as well.
Especially in the winter too. I feel like that one's such a great one, because you have all those inside activities.
That's true. Your most unforgettable micro trip.
So my most unforgettable micro trip was probably when we went to Michigan. We did Traverse City and we did Saugatuck, Michigan. So we drove. That was actually a road trip, weekend trip. I think it was my most unforgettable because I was like, I need to go on a weekend. Like I was like, these are my dates. I have to go somewhere. And it was during like a holiday weekend. So I was using my flow method. I was looking for flights, and everything was like 500 plus. I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't go anywhere. I was feeling like everything was against me. I was just, yeah, being dramatic. But then I was like, well, why don't we just drive somewhere? And I was like, I've never been to Michigan. And that trip just ended up just thing after thing after thing. We were like, I went cherry picking for the first time. I never even seen a cherry tree. We went cherry picking. We went to wineries. They have like huge sand dunes there. Like it was great. So I think that one was like definitely the most surprising just because I was like, first of all, that was not where I wanted to go. And then second of all, I had an amazing time.
I feel like it's like the places you come in with the least expectations end up being the best trips. And I will say you're real on that. I was like, oh, I need to book a trip here ASAP.
Yes.
She as a person who loves US travel, trying to hit up all 50 states and as many of big cities within it. This has everything because I love me some wine. So
yes. There's also in Michigan where I want to do a weekend trip is called Mackinac Island. It's no cars.
I have heard about that. Yeah.
So I think that one's my next one. There's some jumper plane, just right across Lake Michigan. So I'm like, maybe soon.
So building on the unforgettable, most underrated micro trip.
I'm gonna have to go with Boston on that one. I think Boston. I heard a lot of comments before going to Boston just about like Boston as a Black traveler. They were just like, "What is there to do?" What? And I was like, "I'm still, I'm still going." So we had a great time. We also went to the African American History Museum there. They have a Black Heritage Trail as well. It was a great time. I would definitely recommend that, and I think it's a great weekend trip, especially like, it's super walkable. So I think that one.
Yes, I appreciate you mentioning that because while Boston is a big tourist destination, you're making me think it's not necessarily a tourist destination for Black travelers.
Yes.
So it's underrated for our people. And it's true, there is a lot of stuff there. And it's like, yes, there are Black people in Boston. Most overrated destination.
I don't know. I'm going to just have to say New York just because I think it's the first one that a lot of people go to and I want people to look outside just a little bit. I think once you do it, that's great. And you can always go back. But I see a lot of people going back 2 and 3 times. I just want you to go one more state over each time. Just try something.
Not one more state. Like, I'm going to need you to go to New Jersey. I'm going to need you to go Delaware. I'm just taking a map.
Go to Niagara Falls. Like, let me just.
Right. Like, there's Buffalo, which has a lot of Black history going on. Like, that's true. I mean, that's how I feel with the Miamis and the Atlantas. Like, what is a place that surprised you?
I would say Philadelphia. So I told you my fiance, he lives in Harrisburg. So for my birthday, he was like, we're doing a weekend trip to Philadelphia. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's an hour from you. Like, as you can see, there's a hint of drama.
Yes.
There's a hint of drama that just is always involved. So he picked a really nice hotel. I was super happy, and he planned the entire weekend, and we had a great time. It's like filled with art. I love art. I think it's like 5% of like each of like the tall building budgets has to have like, they have to have like one piece of art on each of their like plots. And I did not know that. So we were just like going around looking at all the different art. The city is beautiful. The food was really good. We had this pretzel that I'm like always thinking about. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Good on the
in a water feature.
See, yes, we forget that. So, especially for Philadelphia, I forget they do have some water views on there, and you could take a boat ride. Yes. What is a place you would return to again and again?
Now, I am the person who I do not like to return. Like, I like to just continue going. So I feel like very little places would I return to again and again. I would say probably Orlando.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's a surprising one. Say more.
Probably Orlando because I grew up there obviously, but I do think Orlando is a great weekend trip because we have like a really great downtown area that a lot of people know about. So I think it's a great weekend trip for kids. Obviously, anytime I fly home, I'm always seeing kids on the flight, and I'm so happy because I'm like, oh, they're gonna go to Disney. It's just the happiest place on earth, they say. So I would say definitely for that reason, but I think a lot more people should just go and experience just like downtown Orlando as well. So I would say.
Okay. Yes, I will admit I'm like many others, only been there for Disney World, but Orlando has been creeping up more on my list. I've heard more than one person say this, so.
Yeah, and I think I haven't done like a full-fledged weekend trip just because I feel weird if I like don't stay with my family and stuff. So I need to probably just put my blinders on and do one so I can make a full itinerary there.
That makes sense. And then what is a one and done destination for you?
Ooh. So I did a weekend trip to San Antonio, which I absolutely love San Antonio, but being from Florida, like I'm used to being hot, but I went during their hot season and I was just literally melting.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
I was like, I don't think I can do this again. But I would go during their not hot season. I would go back.
Got it. Yes.
But just, yeah, not down there to Texas anytime during the hot. It was too much for me.
Yeah, it was unbearable.
Yeah.
And then what's your next micro trip you have in the works?
Yeah, next weekend we're going to San Diego. So I'm super duper excited about this one. This will be our first West Coast weekend trip. I'm also doing Seattle in a couple of months. So a lot of people have been asking me about West Coast, West Coast, West Coast. So I'm excited to get over there. This is one of them I'm leaving on Saturday morning. And so we're only doing 2 nights in a hotel. So I must be getting back on like Monday afternoon or something.
But then with the time difference, right? It balances out somehow.
Yes, exactly. So this one's like, get off the plane, right to it.
If this is inspiring your next trip, I can help make your planning simple. I offer done with you consultations, custom travel itinerary services, and ready to book itineraries. All services are based on my expertise and personal experience of visiting over 40 states and 35 countries. Visit frannythetraveler.com to learn more. Well, before we close out, I'm going to have you complete this sentence stem. So, unlocking Black journeys means.
I think I'm going to circle it back to that context thought that we had at the beginning of this conversation. So I think it's purposely putting yourself in different contexts or situations or into those journeys of potential shock and seeing what comes out on the other side. I think that is how you can really unlock your journey as a Black traveler. That to me is the reason why we should be traveling. We should be traveling to learn more about each other, learn more about others, but also learn more about ourselves. And that's really what I love about traveling in general. And I think as a Black woman, it's just so important. I've learned so much about myself through unlocking, different elements of fear and different situations because of what travel has given me.
Love that. I am super inspired by that.
Oh, yay!
So what's next for you? So if you have any upcoming projects or any upcoming trips that you're excited about or upcoming content that we can expect from you, this is the space to plug that in.
Yeah, I'm excited. We are building our community over here. I'm at Go Kylah Go on both Instagram, TikTok, and also Facebook. The Facebook community is over there rallying now. I'm like, okay, we've got a new community. That's where I post all of my content. I also have in my LinkedIn, all of those bios, all of my free maps and itineraries. So you can download those anytime you want. In addition to the ebook on the flow method, I've got a database on different weekend trip ideas and also a full Chicago weekend itinerary. I made like a 23-page guide. So you can go ahead and check that out as well. And the travels are coming up full steam ahead for fall. That is going to be where everything is going to be coming out. So we've got over 15 different places that we're going to be going to. So I'm super excited to share them all.
I'm so excited to join on this journey. I am a big fan. Every time a reel pops up, I'm like, I'm so excited. Where are we right now? Especially because you always give a detailed itinerary. I'm like, she is dropping so many gems for free.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do.
Yes. And so thank you, Kylah, for being here and unlocking your Black journey with us. This was such a great conversation. I'm leaving renewed and inspired to take more micro trips. So now let's see what the fall and winter looks like. And so until next time, keep unlocking your Black journey.
Yay!
If you enjoyed this episode, show some love. Like, comment, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Unlock Black Journeys, the podcast. Want even more? Make sure you head to frannythetraveler.com. That's where you'll find more episodes, Black-owned travel guides, and personal reflections of traveling while Black you won't find anywhere else. And don't forget to check out my book, Support Black Period. It's your go-to guide to discovering Black-owned businesses across all 50 states.